Am I the antagonist for defending my child for using a different language when they were upset during an argument at kindergarten? I, 36 years old female, have been married to my wonderful wife, Anna, 35 years old female, for the past 10 years. We have a 5-year-old son, Liam. Anna and I both work during the day, so Liam spends the time until one of us can pick him up at his kindergarten. The other day, Liam's teacher called me and said they would appreciate if we both were available when we picked him up, because he had gotten in an argument and they wanted to talk to us. Initially, I was worried, so I moved a few of my meetings and called my wife. We both went to pick him up. The whole issue was he had gotten in an argument with a girl over the rules of a game they were playing. The teacher said as he got angry, he started speaking in a different language, and no one could understand what he was on about. The other kid's parents said it was offensive to speak in a way that no one understood, and we should have taught him better. Now, I am a Greek woman, my wife is French. We live in an English-speaking country. While Liam can certainly speak English, he occasionally uses Greek and French. Both Anna and I learned each other's languages, so our household is a mix of all three at different times. He picked up on both of them and can speak them more or less. I said we have clearly taught him well, since he has been able to speak in other languages fluently this whole time, but only slipped when he was frustrated during an argument. I said it was in no way offensive, that it was human reaction, and that Liam would surely get it under his full control over time. But he is 5 now, so maybe we all should take a deep breath. The other kid's parents were extremely mad, saying their daughter was so upset she cried after the argument, and that Liam had to apologize about making her feel this frustration via using another language. My wife answered them with the same overall point as I did, but they didn't back down. Even the teacher said we had to work on Liam not making this a recurring theme, which is fair. After the meeting was over and we were going to drive away, the other kid's dad made a comment along the lines of, "You're all arrogant rich people driving cars like this and thinking whatever you're doing is right," in front of the kids. I got really mad and said I hope you're a better parent than what I'm guessing you are. After we went home, Anna and I did tell Liam to not speak to other people in a language they don't understand. Later, we talked among ourselves and wondered if we really did escalate the whole argument even more. I'm asking on behalf of both us. Were we the a-holes? I must say this situation is as tangled as a plate of spaghetti. First of all, props to Liam for being trilingual at the tender age of 5. That's quite the achievement. It seems like he got caught up in a little language mix-up during a game, which is totally understandable. Now on to the other parents, seriously getting all bent out of shape because a kid used a different language out of frustration. That's like getting upset at a fish for swimming. And that dad's snarky comment about your car? Please, that's just cheap shots at a minivan derby. You and Anna did the right thing by addressing the issue with Liam, but maybe next time, keep the parent-teacher drama to a simmer instead of turning up the heat. In the grand scheme of things, this is just a blip on the radar. So no, you guys are definitely not the a-holes in this situation. Just a couple of multilingual parents trying to navigate the wild world of kindergarten arguments. Am I the antagonist for staying at my child's wedding after they referred to their grandmother as the most important woman in their life, even though my partner was their step-parent for most of their life? My son got married a month ago, and ever since then tensions have been high with my wife and her parents. My wife and I married after the death of my first wife. Our son was 6 when she died, but our relationship had been over for a couple of years before she passed. We had stayed legally married for a while and tried to keep up pretenses for the sake of our son, but we both met people we wanted to be with, and then my first wife died. I continued to see my wife, the woman I had met and wanted to be with, but I did not introduce her to my son for another year, and I saw her far less for several months while I focused on my son and helping him through the loss of his mom. My son was 7 when he met my wife, and I admit, my wife and I married quickly. He was a few weeks shy of 8 years old, and he struggled with my wife being part of our lives. He was still in therapy, but we also did some group therapy together with a different therapist. He was respectful to her but emotionally distant. He was not affectionate and did not love her. Over time, she did take on more parental responsibility, but we didn't jump straight into that. I didn't marry her to pawn my son off on someone else like some men do. I was always engaged in my son's life, and I always parented. He always turned to his grandmother, his mother's mother. He would call her regularly and would turn to her if I wasn't around and he was upset about something. He would see her as often as he could. And eventually, per the advice of the therapist and after talking to my wife about how she was struggling doing all the parental things but him being emotionally distant with her, I decided she should try to fill more of a friend-aunt kind of role, and not that of a parent. She wasn't okay with it at first, but then admitted it would wear on her if he never returned her love or see him as a mom to him, and he was clear in therapy that he didn't want her as his second mom. He wanted nobody as that. Fast forward to the wedding, and during the toasts my son thanked me and my wife and his grandmother. And he mentioned his mother and how she was always his number one, but how after she died, his grandmother was the most important woman in his life until he met his wife, and how they both loved her. My wife became very upset upon hearing this. She told me she wanted to leave once the speeches were done. I told her I didn't want to leave my son's wedding. She asked how I could stay when he showed how much he doesn't really value her or love her. She left. I stayed, and she ended up at her parents' house. When I got home, she told me she felt abandoned, and her parents told me I was a bad husband, and I should have put my son in his place and told him only one living woman deserved to be declared the most important woman in his life, besides his wife, and that was my wife. They feel I should have left with her because the ceremony was over and it was just the reception. Am I the asshole? Your situation sounds like the plot of a soap opera. On one hand, it's understandable that your wife felt hurt by your son's toast at the wedding. But on the other hand, expecting a child to fully embrace a new parental figure immediately is a bit unrealistic. It seems like you've all been through a lot of emotional turmoil, and navigating blended family dynamics is never easy. The in-laws giving their 2 cents doesn't help either. Ultimately, communication and understanding are key in these situations. It might be worth sitting down with your wife and son to address these feelings and find a way to move forward together. Hopefully, you can all find some common ground and work towards a harmonious relationship. Am I the antagonist for warning people about Happy Horsepoo Ranch? I, 25 years old female, have been estranged from my father since I went to college at 18. Long story short, he was abusive to me and my mom and sisters growing up. I've been diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder because of it. He remarried when I was 16. I found out on Facebook, despite us not being estranged, and moved to my stepmom's, June, family farm in a rural area of the state. It's been in her family for generations and they raise horses. June is very similar to him. She had a tough upbringing and completely endorses how he raised us, even talking about it as a joke in front of my friends. Anyway, my youngest sister tells me that June and my dad are opening an equine therapy center on their farm for at-risk youth and people with PTSD. I couldn't help but think this was not only hypocritical but dangerous, based on how my dad thinks he did nothing wrong and could invalidate the kid's experiences. I called the state to find out if I could report him, and found out that they've filed the therapy center as faith-based, so they need no permit, and there's basically no regulations on what they can do. So I made a public Facebook post. I said that my dad had abused my whole family for years, lied about why we're estranged, and is now opening this Happy Horseshit Ranch. I advised people not go. June texted me asking me to take it down. She said this was her dream, and I was ruining it, and he was barely a part of it. I asked if he would be conducting the therapy and she said, well, yes. So I said no, it stays. She lost her temper. My stepsister started posting that my dad's a good Christian man and I'm an ungrateful, selfish, money-grubbing person. June started saying I deserved everything he did in very explicit language. So I took screenshots of what she texted me and added it to my post. People who weren't them responded well to my post, and some even said thank you for the warning, particularly the screenshots. I feel justified in sharing my story, but part of me wonders if I am truly crushing June's lifelong dream for something mostly about her husband. I also didn't specify the type of abuse, which they said makes people think it was worse than it was. Am I the asshole? Well, it sounds like this equine therapy center drama has more twists and turns than a soap opera. On a serious note, your concerns about the potential harm this could cause to vulnerable individuals are valid. It's important to consider the impact of your actions, but ultimately prioritizing the well-being of others is commendable. Plus, in the age of screenshots, it's always a risky move to go on the offensive in text messages. So rest assured that you're not the asshole in this situation. Keep standing up for what you believe in, even if it means disrupting someone's dream of a happy horseshit ranch. Am I the antagonist for siding with my sister in a dispute between her and my parents and telling my parents I don't understand their side? When I, 27-year-old female, was 10 and my sister, 25-year-old female, was 8, our parents sat us down and announced they were getting a divorce. This did come as a surprise to the two of us. We both thought we had a happy family and that our parents were happily married. Our parents were very traditional, told us all about the importance of marriage and family, and they would often use the terms broken homes, broken families to describe divorce when you have kids. So this really blindsided us. To make it worse, my sister is on the autism spectrum, and she has always had a very hard time with change, and when she's going through a lot she can get lost inside her head. Right after my parents told us, my sister started to cry, but she didn't realize because she was inside her head. Our parents were really impatient with her and told her to get out of her head so they could finish talking because they couldn't deal with her not paying attention. She burst into tears the second it happened and ran out of the room. My parents were so on edge, and they were moody with me. I gave my sister a couple of minutes before following her out of the room, which pissed them off. My parents went to talk to my sister after a few hours and she kept saying she didn't want our family to change, and they needed to stay together because she didn't want a broken home and a broken family. They got so mad at her and called her selfish. 3 weeks after that, they regretted it apparently. So they sat her down and assured her nothing was changing, and it would all be fine, and her life would be the very same. My sister doesn't understand when people are not direct with her, and she can have a hard time figuring out double meanings to things. So she believed this was them saying they were staying together, and she was so happy, and got so excited and said she was so glad they were staying married and still loved each other. This pissed them off again, and she ended up running off crying again. They got annoyed with her for asking questions about the divorce. They would get so frustrated with her and said she was prying, but she couldn't understand. Over the years, she has gotten better at understanding not everything will get you an answer, but back then she felt like her whole belief system was rocked. Both parents were frustrated with my sister when they got remarried to others because she wasn't warmer with them and their families than she was with other new people, strangers in her life. Now she's an adult and has made some choices my parents do not agree with, and she told them via text instead of face-to-face. She was very blunt and direct with them also. This angered my parents, and they confronted her about keeping them on the outside of her life and dropping major news via text. This started a dispute between them, and my parents tried venting to me about it, but I told them they did this to themselves with how they treated my sister, and I felt she was right. They were angry at me for taking her side. Am I the asshole? Am I the antagonist? In response to your post, it sounds like you were definitely not the asshole in this situation. Your sister was clearly caught in a difficult position, and your parents' handling of the divorce announcement and subsequent interactions with her were insensitive and unfair. It's understandable that she struggled to process everything, especially given her challenges with change and communication. It's commendable that you stood up for your sister and offered her support when she needed it. Family dynamics can be complicated, but it's important to prioritize empathy and understanding. Your parents may have acted out of frustration, but it seems like they mishandled the situation and failed to consider your sister's feelings. In the end, it's clear that you were looking out for your sister's well-being and advocating for her in a difficult situation. Your parents' reaction to your support may be a reflection of their own guilt or defensiveness, but ultimately it's essential to prioritize open communication and compassion within the family. Keep being there for your sister and standing up for what you believe is right. You're definitely not the asshole in this scenario. Am I the antagonist for not helping pay for an expensive dinner? Yesterday, my ex-boyfriend and I, who have been dating for a bit over 7 months, had plans to hang out. We planned to go bowling, so I got a Groupon and paid ahead. Before bowling, my boyfriend decided he wanted to go to a wine and cheese place. I pointed out how expensive it is, as I had just paid rent and my student loan payment, so I could not afford it. He assured me he wanted to go and he would pay for it. This was confirmed several other times. When we got there, I decided I wanted a little food because I hadn't eaten in a while after working all day. I said I wanted to get the $13 mac and cheese and I'd pay for it myself, but he said not to worry about it. He then proceeds to order a bottle of wine and 2 cheese boards, without my input on how much we should order. We proceed to have a really nice and enjoyable time together, I thought at least. At the end, when we get the bill, he tells me, does not ask, tells me, to send him $60. I am a bit shocked and ask if he's serious. I point out that he insisted several times that he wanted to go here and he would pay, as I don't have the money right now to spend on something like this. He gets very angry and says that this shows him who I really am. He continues saying that and says, what if I couldn't afford the tab? You wouldn't help me? I told him I obviously would help in a case like that, but he insisted on going here and paying and didn't even ask me to help. I pointed out that it was essentially a command, and he told me that if he tells me to do something, I should do it. My boyfriend pays, gets up and leaves, and I get up to follow and trail behind. He turned around as I was on my phone behind him and asked if I was ordering an Uber for myself. I said no, and he told me, I wish you were. This immediately makes me start crying, and I turn around and walk across the street to the nearest bench to sit down. He continues walking away and disappears. I get a call 5 minutes later and he asks where I am. I told him I went across the street to sit on the bench, and he said he doesn't see me, then immediately goes back into the argument. I try to explain my perspective again and he ends up hanging up on me. He does not come back and does not contact me again. It was dark at this time, and he left me alone, drunk and crying on the street. We both live in a highly populated area. He didn't even check to see if I got home safe or anything. I texted him one time to point out how he completely ditched me and didn't even care to see if I got home safe. So he has made it clear that he doesn't care about me. Perhaps a bit dramatic? I don't think so though. He just answers after a bit. That's crazy. Okay, I have since blocked him. Am I the asshole for not helping to pay when he told me to? I know he will very likely see this. He told me a few times in the past to post our arguments on Reddit so that I'd see that I'm wrong. So alright, let's see this time. In this situation, it seems like your ex-boyfriend dropped the ball pretty hard, and not in a good bowling way. You were upfront about your financial situation and hesitance to splurge at the wine and cheese place, yet he assured you he would foot the bill. It's not cool for him to demand payment after the fact, especially when you were prepared to cover your own meal. Adding insult to injury, leaving you alone on the street in the dark without verifying your safety is a major red flag. As for blocking him, that seems like a wise move given his dismissive response to your concerns. You're not the asshole in this situation. If anything, he needs to learn that communication and respect are key in any relationship. Stay strong and don't second-guess your actions here. And for future outings, maybe stick with activities where splitting the bill doesn't lead to this kind of drama. Am I the antagonist for sending my parents a picture of the biblical Rebeccah every time they try to get in touch with me? I'm a 19-year-old woman currently in college. I come from a churchy family, and there was a big fight 2 years ago when I decided to get a septum piercing and a nose ring. My parents thought it was trashy and whorish, and that only awful people get piercings like that and display them for everyone. I'm not really religious, but I've read a lot of the Bible, and in one of the fights I pointed out that the biblical matriarch Rebeccah, the wife of Isaac, wore a nose ring. Strictly speaking, it's not 100% textually clear that she did. But when Eliezer gives her one and some bracelets in Genesis 24:22, and a few verses later her brother notices her with the jewelry, and the bracelets are explicitly being worn, I think the reading is much more natural that she just put the jewelry on. And if they're really all about me being godly and following the teaching of the Bible, there shouldn't be any problems with me hating nose ring. That did not persuade them, and things have been a bit chilly since then, although the distance when I went off to university has helped some. Still, my folks have reached out on several occasions, once every other month or so, and most of the time I'll respond, but usually send back pictures of some sort of image of Rebeccah in an icon or something. I have not come home in person since I went off to study. This morning, my uncle called up. I've gotten along better with him than most of my family, and he asked when I was going to stop being childish. And that while I have every right to keep my distance from my family, I should either say I don't want to have much contact and stick to it, or push for a reconciliation. And that sending passive-aggressive and catty pictures like this was just stirring up trouble for no actual benefit, and that I should stop. I have a lot of respect for my uncle's opinions, and maybe I shouldn't keep this going. On the other hand, my parents make me so steamed about making such a big deal over such a minor thing, and they still have never actually admitted they have done anything wrong, just that they're sorry it created a rift between us. Have I pushed this too far? It sounds like you're in a bit of a pickle there, my friend. On one hand, you're standing your ground and making a valid point with that whole Rebeccah nose ring situation. Kudos for the biblical backup. But on the other hand, sending passive-aggressive pictures might not be the most effective way to bridge the gap with your fam. Your uncle's advice has some weight to it. Maybe it's time to either fully commit to the no-contact vibe or go all in for that reconciliation. As for pushing it too far, well, sometimes family dynamics can be messier than a broken shoelace. I say, keep standing up for what you believe in, but maybe consider a different approach to reaching out. A bit of humor and grace can go a long way in these sticky situations. Good luck and may the nose ring be with you. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.